So
It's 6 o'clock, so I will call the. Thanks, Dave. It's 6 o'clock, so I will call the Public Works Board meeting to order. Madison, can we have a roll call?
Mr. Picard,
here,
Mr. White, Mr. Waters,
Here.
Ms. Wagner,
Here.
Mr. Beagle.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay.
Did you call Mr. Polachek?
Mr. Polachek.
You're on.
You're on.
I apologize. I'm having some pretty bad feedback.
note that Mr. Polachek is here.
Here.
Okay, we'll move on to election of president. So the floor would be open for nominations.
We move that Mark continues as our president.
Second?
Mark, do you accept the nomination?
I do not.
Okay.
I'm under strict orders not to.
Nominate Mr. Polachek?
I second Mr. Polachek.
Mr. Polachek, do you accept the nomination?
No, you did. Mark does a great job at this. He really does. I would do vice. I would do the second.
I bet you will do a great job too.
I think you would do a great job.
I think you'll do it
No,
fine.
I would do the second. I would accept the second part.
Well, just
How about if you do the president, Mark does vice
Greg
president?
Waters cannot
All right.
because he's the city council representative. What was that?
So he accepted.
Okay.
As long as he's vice president.
I'll do that.
Okay. So.
We got to vote on that, but you have to accept the presidency.
So when are you retiring? In about a year? We just do this a year from now.
Yeah, a year from now, we'll do, it's only a one-year commitment.
See? You're not retired yet.
I'm not retired from the Public Works Board yet.
When are you going to start traveling?
This summer.
Let's not talk about personal things here.
I'm sorry, you're right, you're right. All right, I accept. Let's just move on.
So there's a motion and a second for Mr. Polachek as president of the Public Works Board. Madison, can you call the roll, please?
Mr. White, I believe he was on attending virtually. All right, Mr. Waters,
Aye.
Ms. Wagner,
Aye.
Mr. Beagle,
Aye.
Mr. Picard,
Aye.
Mr. Polachek.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay. Mr. Polachek, you can take over chairing the remainder of the meeting.
Son of a gun. All right, let
I'm
me
here
do
to
my
help if you
best.
need me.
I'm sorry?
I'm here to help if you need me.
Thank you.
Let me give you this. And would you like a pencil or pen?
Thank you.
Sure.
All right, the meeting is called to order. It's 6:03 PM. We've had the roll call, we've elected people. We need to elect a vice president.
Correct.
So are there, item number 4, the election of a vice president, which I think Mark would make a good one since he's had that experience. Is there a motion on the table?
I will nominate myself. My wife's gonna kill me.
Second.
Okay, let's just do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
nays? Done. All right, welcome, Mark. Thank you. Congratulations. You can guide me.
Likewise.
All right, the next thing is any corrections with the approvals of the minutes and the approval of the minutes of March 14th, 2024. Those minutes were mailed out in the agenda. I assume you've had some time to read them. Are there any corrections that people want to make? And if not, we would entertain a motion to approve.
Move to approve?
Second?
Moved and seconded to approve. Let's do a voice vote. All those in favor to approve the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
And any
Aye.
nays? No nays. The minutes have been approved. Moving on to item number 5. Number 6. Questions, public comment. I don't see anybody here visually for public comments, but I'll ask the meeting. There could be some people who have logged in online virtually. Are there any public comments? Hearing none, we will close item number 6, moving on to 7. Our recommendations for the bicycle downtown route, and this was attached as a PDF to the agenda. If you've had it, I looked over this morning. If anybody's has some chance, let's just give our director, Randy, an opportunity, or Drake, whichever one wants to take it and go through the handout. Thank you.
Yeah, I can do a quick overview. I can go through it all if you'd like. This was put together by Dwayne. He's on vacation this week.
Oh, okay.
But we were asked to take a look at putting in a multi-use path through Commons Park, on the edge of Commons Park. So there's multiple locations noted throughout the presentation of where such a path could go. You'll note as you go through the pictures, you'll notice a number of conflicts that exist with trees, utilities, installed benches that would cause issues. The tree conflicts are specifically mentioned on the south side. There's 3 large trees, 2 of crab apples and 1 Norway maple, and then 2 additional ones that would have potential root mass disturbance, which would make their viability questionable. And then the other conflicts, I won't list them all, are noted as well. The opinion of probable cost for putting a multi-use path on the south side there is $65,000, excluding engineering. We then looked at the Commons Park, Lake Street to Main Street, the north side of Madison Street. The same process goes through of the pictures of that area, with the slide following that notes the potential conflict. There would be a removal of 2 large trees, one which is a silver maple and the other which is a honey locust, and then the significant root mass disturbance of an additional 5 trees. And then the listing of the other conflicts that exist. This total probable cost, opinion of probable cost is $90,000, which does not include engineering as well. So if there's comments, this was reviewed by the Grounds and Facilities Director as well, who was evaluating the impact on the trees. Based on the comments back and the conflicts with the trees, the utilities, and other park amenities and infrastructure located, staff doesn't recommend pursuing either of these options. Loss of green space is a consideration as well. We considered that there may be potential conflicts with special events, introducing more additional pedestrian bicycle interaction during those crowded events. We could close them during special events, but they do exist, and they're not a low-cost option, which was what originally the Public Works Board had indicated that they were most interested in. If there's any questions, we'll do our best to assist, but that's a very high-level overview of the evaluation of the possible paths along Commons Park.
Thank you for the overview. Is there discussion?
Quick question.
Greg?
Any idea how much that engineering cost would be, just a rough estimate?
5 to 15% is a rough estimate, so
Okay.
I would imagine it'd be lower on a project like this that's not that high, so probably in the 5 to 10. Randy, is that? Yeah, I would agree. So, 6,000 to $15,000, $12,000, depending on which option was selected. Maybe less if the lower cost option. So as low as 3 and as high as 15, maybe.
Thank you.
I also have a question. Was there consideration into this prior to all the upgrades to Commons Park? Like when we were doing all of the sidewalks and all of the projects, at that time, was it considered?
I'm not sure. This effort has been more recent than those were at the time of those. Was before my time here. Dan may be able to speak to it, but it would precede Randy and I.
Briefly, the most recent updates to Commons Park were a part of an accessibility grant that was presented and granted to the city. I believe it was from the Watertown Community Foundation. And it was really about access to that space. I think this is a different initiative with regard to bike paths. However, access to the park generally has been, discussed at length. There's a comprehensive outdoor recreation plan, for instance, that shows maybe future plans or potentialities for Commons Park. I think this still kind of is a little bit separate from that. In my recollection, and Mark, you probably have a good sense of this, I think this is the first time that the idea of bike paths, that a multi-use path of 10 feet in width has been presented for that park specifically. Good?
Yep.
Thank you.
Greg?
I just
Go ahead, Tom.
have a couple comments. One, I'm against taking big trees down unless they're scheduled to be taken down for some particular reason. There's just a lack of green space everywhere, and you don't grow trees overnight. And then the pedestrian bicycle interaction, especially obviously you can close it during bigger events, but even when there's not bigger events, in the summertime, there's quite a few people that walk through the park and yada, yada. And I don't know, I just see it as a safety hazard, especially if you get kids, in there that don't know any better, that are zipping through there on skateboards or whatever else may be. And then the last comment I'll make is I don't know what the overall goal is with all the bike paths, but from a town perspective, you probably won't see bike paths on town roads just from the standpoint of the large cost of installing those with the extra asphalt. So if the goal at some point is to try to connect all this stuff, I think the townships are really going to struggle with that. And so in end, you're going to have dead ends on these bike paths anyway, whether it's in the city or heading into a township.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
Yeah, just for the good of the order for Ms. Wagner, that we have been talking about bike lanes mostly from the Brookstone area into the downtown, how to connect that neighborhood basically. And that first presentation, I think, was back December 14th of last year. So if you look at the agenda there, you can see the proposal that was put out at that time. And then there was a second one, and this is the third. So if you go back to December, you would see the first one, and then the next one was probably in February, March time period.
Right.
And then this one here.
Yeah,
So that would get you up to speed.
I did review some of those, but this seemed different than what was being proposed because this is a shared use path. Though
Yep.
you were not investigating a shared use path, right? Or was it the same? I'm a little confused on the differences between there is a bike route existing. I've been on it, but it's not like in through the town. If you look around, there's signs that say bike route. I've ride my road bike, so I've been on a lot of the road bike routes, but they're not like this isn't extending the whole roadway. Is that correct?
It would extend the. It would.
Or is it
in
the
park,
sidewalk
it would extend
extension?
the sidewalks into the park. It was brought up largely because as a potential alternative to any bicycle infrastructure that would eliminate parking on a route within the downtown.
okay.
So it was thought, is it possible to accommodate those facilities without impacting parking? And so that's why the Public Works Board wanted to take a look and see what the effect would be of such a proposal.
That makes sense.
We'd just like to talk a little bit about the further back history. one of the finance directors of the city, Jim Heilman, was fond of saying, we have lots of bike paths because every sidewalk in the city allows bicycles to go on, with the exception of the downtown area. So most of the sidewalks in the Commons Park, people are already allowed to ride sidewalks on. The exception being the no sidewalk downtown ordinance specifies Lake Street and Main Street, both sides. So the northeast side of the Commons Park, you can ride a bicycle on, but the west side of Commons Park and the south side of Commons Park, you can't. And from a bicycle riding perspective, the worst area, I think, in the whole city is the south side of Commons Park, where that angled parking is, and there's always cars parked in that angled parking. I'm not sure why I understand why there's no bicycling on right in front of businesses. I'm not sure why a city council at some point in the past decided no bicycling on the Commons Park, on two of the three sides of the Commons Park sidewalk.
So I think I disagree with your interpretation there. I'm reading the ordinance. The ordinance states, the riding of bicycles is prohibited on sidewalks adjacent to the following streets: Main Street between Water Street and Madison Street, East Lake Street between Ford Court and Main Street, West Lake Street between Main Street and a point 260 feet west from the west line of Church Street, where Church Street intersects West Lake Street. Well, I guess you're right. It doesn't include Madison Street between between Main Street and Lake Street. I don't know why that hasn't been added or why, I mean, this is an ancient ordinance, but I guess it is a kind of the definition of intent for them not having to have included it previously. And it does seem that bicycle riding is allowed at that location. So I think you're right. I might have been premature there.
So what you just outlined,
It's around the south side of the park on Main Street.
right?
And all, like a portion of Water Street to downtown, and then north on Main Street, and then a portion of East Lakes, or West Lake Street from Main Street. Not on Madison specifically, on the north side of the park.
So, my opinion or perspective is that there hasn't been, in the 1950s or 60s, in the far long ago, people didn't talk about or do bike paths, and in the city of Lake Mills, it's not been a focus for quite a long time, up until the recent past. The first non-automotive structures in the city that I can think of are the paths in the industrial park.
So, for clarification, the city staff is recommending to not construct a shared use path at Commons Park at this time. Is there a motion to accept that, or we don't need to do anything really, do we? This is just a report for our information. It was studied by the city staff, and they've come back with the recommendation to leave things as they are. Is that correct?
Correct. So if you don't want to do anything, no action's necessary. If you wanted to investigate further, if you wanted to forward something to the city council, if there's another option that the Public Works Board wants to consider, we as staff aren't sure what the next step is now. There's been 3 proposals. There's been trepidation, I think, over aspects of all three.
All 3 of them.
So it's a question of priorities, right? What is the goal, and where do you want to go? We've kind of identified the first 2 had issues with conflicts with parking. So there is a question of parking versus bicycle facilities and bicycle friendliness. And then obviously this one, the conflict is more with green space, natural amenities, and then also city infrastructure and park benches, things of that nature. So there are competing priorities with all three.
So it's a case of, there is no really one good solution that solves everybody's.
We haven't identified a solution yet that allows for expanded bicycle infrastructure with no reduction in parking or no loss of green space or conflicts with mature trees.
Thank you.
That's the best way I can lay it out.
Yep. So.
So first, to move forward on
You want
a bike resolution, we could, since it's on the agenda, a motion could be made tonight, or if we want to make a motion in the future, we'd have to get it put back on the Public Works agenda in the future.
Okay. So then, do we, I don't see a clear, I've read all the three studies, and I don't see a good solution at all of them. So, first, do no harm, correct? I mean, I don't know that you're gonna.
Yeah, it's probably a question I can't answer for you. I think
Right.
that it's certainly the Public Works Board, the City Council choosing to prioritize bicycle infrastructure at the expense of parking is one that is probably chosen in communities across the state, as well as the flip side of choosing not to install that infrastructure in favor of parking. So that is a policy level question that is what you're grappling with essentially.
Right. So is this a priority of city council to have?
There's from the community standpoint, when we did a survey for the comprehensive plan,
Yep, I
it was
remember.
overwhelmingly bicycle infrastructure was supported in that proposal, or that survey, excuse me. So that's a community priority, but we are having a goal session in the future for city council, and those things may come back. So it was something that city council asked Public Works to review at this point and make recommendations back if we deem to do that.
Maybe.
What would you like to do here?
Is it adequate for Greg to provide that feedback to the city council, or we could make something that shows up in the minutes saying, we've reviewed three plans and don't see a path forward, a clear path forward?
Can we just table it indefinitely
Well,
in case it comes back up?
I'd like to make a motion to communicate to the city council that the Public Works Board has reviewed several bicycle path proposals and does not see a clear path forward at this time. It's just communicating information. It's going to be recorded in the minutes if it's a motion.
So the motion is that the Public Works Board has reviewed several options and
Does not see a clear path forward.
does not see a clear path forward, and therefore does not have a recommendation at this time.
Yes.
Okay. Is there a second to that?
I'll second.
Okay, and Mary is seconded. And is there any discussion on that motion? Tom?
I'm good.
Okay.
I guess I would like to further review this and maybe come back to Public Works and have further discussion on this topic in the future.
Okay.
But I need to review, I'm not sure where that would go. I still need to review some facts and go from there.
So that doesn't really mean that we have to amend that motion, though.
Maybe not.
You're just going to bring it back.
I think you could bring it back if
Yeah.
there was new information to be presented, other considerations to be made. So I don't think adoption of this motion would preclude the Public Works Board
Right.
from discussing it in the future, if that's the concern.
That's how I see it.
It's a progress report.
It's an update.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. So it's been moved and seconded that the Public Works Board has reviewed several options, on bike paths. And at this time, we do not see a clear path forward with all the three options that we have reviewed that have satisfied all the parties. Those were, I think I interjected my own comments in there. All those in favor, do we need a roll call vote on this? Or probably not?
You don't need to do a roll
We don't
call.
need a-
You can do it by voice vote.
Yeah, okay, let's a voice vote. Those in favor of this motion, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And any nays out there?
No.
Hearing, no, one nay. And, but the ayes have it, so this motion has passed, and certainly it can be brought back for further review in the future. So that brings us to the next item, which is a discussion and recommendation on the yard, any amendments to Chapter 636, the yard waste.
So this is this is on the agenda as kind of a preliminary discussion point for the Public Works Board. Mr. Ricard had previously mentioned a desire to review the allowable materials to be dropped off at the yard waste center. The city council did authorize staff to move forward with the relocation of the yard waste site from Stony Road to South CP Avenue. Public Works will be beginning that process beginning next week as far as site preparation and preparing for that move. So the city council is interested in the Public Works Board continuing to discuss potential changes to the ordinance. Some of the things that they mentioned were the current ordinance, it's for residents only. There's no allowance for non-residents to drop off. And then in addition, there is no allowance or process or method provided for contractors to gain access to it. Contractors are prohibited. And then obviously there is the material. You could also codify hours of operation in ordinance if you so chose. The current motion, the current resolution that was adopted is for daylight hours, but the city council acknowledged that that would be continued to be discussed, but it is for daylight hours currently once it's up and running, 7 days a week, daylight hours. And with a key card access option. So this is kind of an open-ended discussion. Are there changes Public Works Board would like to see brought back in ordinance language that staff can put together for the board to consider? What's the vision for the yard waste center as far as access and use?
Hey, Drake. I just want to reiterate that there's probably going to be town interest in this, and I think you already know that from our work session meeting. Obviously, I would highly suggest getting the thing off the ground because you're going to have bugs to work out before you start incorporating other language into an ordinance, allowing other people or other townships or municipalities to use it. I understand the difficulties of getting something like that off the ground, and I would, expect that, you let you guys kind of get things working before you start thinking about expanding. But there is dire interest, I think, from the townships. I think you already know that, and that's something that can be worked on, obviously, down the road.
Okay. Mark?
So the ordinance currently says for hours of operation that the city manager shall establish the hours of operation. So in general, I'm wondering, there's advantages to not putting details in an ordinance because they're harder to change. So things like hours of operation, I don't think aren't in there, and I don't think should be in there. If it involves money, does it have to be in an ordinance? Is there a line that's clearly drawn for that, or is it kind of fuzzy?
I'm sorry for, I missed the first part of that question.
So like as an example, town usage of it, is that something that could be left to the city manager and stated in the ordinance, or even not stated at all? Or is that something that needs to be in an ordinance? Where is the line between what needs to be put in an ordinance versus what can be decided as administratively?
I'll let the attorney speak to it, but largely I believe, yes, delegation of authority is appropriate and possible. The prohibition exists now, so the prohibition would have to be removed. But in general, I don't believe it would fall under a non-delegable authority of the city council. Anything to add?
No, I agree. And the big thing that I wanted to state is there is a residency requirement that's currently established in ordinance. We can't just go off willy-nilly saying that that doesn't any longer exist. So getting a sense of what your recommendation to the council would be, having the council provide us a direction, whether it's an adoption of an ordinance or a resolution that states this is our intent, we delegate authority to the city manager is appropriate. I think the other kind of side of that is a fee schedule. What I would likely do if there is a fee that is established for residents or non-residents or how for use generally, we'd probably reference that a fee schedule is adopted by the council or updated by the council on a basis of every now and then. So I think there are changes to the ordinance that will be necessary as this progresses. Right now, I don't think we have the best sense of what comprehensively this looks like. So maybe some feedback there. But I agree with you completely on kind of your the general statement that you made that maybe non-specific in certain circumstances and delegating authority to administrative staff is appropriate, certainly with regard to administration of this arm of the government. So thanks, Mike, or Mark, excuse me.
So, is there further discussion about this? Do we need to have?
No,
We-
there's time. There's time for
Yeah.
the Public Works Board to continue discussing this. You don't have to take action tonight. It's listed. If there's things the Public Works Board knows that you want to see, options for coming forward or potential language, for at future meetings, we could take in that feedback and prepare materials for a future meeting. Obviously the new site won't be operational yet for in the immediate future, so there is time yet for the Public Works Board to grapple with these questions.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd just like to add one thing in regards to delegation. I think it would be a smart idea to delegate, just an example, like the list of things that you can bring to the dump to the administrative level, keeping it out of the, essentially the council ordinance level, so you don't have to sit there and change it all the time. Let them delegate, because that can change. Like they might be getting a certain product and it's filled with something else and they want to end that abruptly. That would give them the authority to do that.
That's a good point, Mr. Biko. There currently exists in the ordinance an ability for there are certain materials that are stated that they can be collected or can be dropped off based on ordinance, but there is a clause that basically says that the city manager has the authority to stop such use at any point in time. So it is contemplated currently. I agree, that's appropriate. And overall, it just kind of goes back to the point that this needs to be looked at in contemplation of the new site.
Great.
On the fee schedule, would that be in the ordinance or would that be in the motion itself at city council?
My preference is for fee ordinances to be set by resolution rather than set in ordinance, and then they can be reviewed on an annual, semi-annual basis. That's what we've been trending towards with other fee schedules, so that's typically a more workable solution than, obviously changing an ordinance takes a longer amount of time. Yep. So I would recommend fee schedules adopted through resolution.
Okay.
Can we get a recommendation from city staff on the fee schedule then?
Sure.
Great.
Can we also include maybe non-residents versus residents if that was going to be
Yep, we can put
something we
together some-
contemplate to open that up?
We can put together some options.
And if I recall, in one of the early presentations on this, there was a separation of just what items were accepted. And I think that would be good to highlight just that, because I know there's always people that are going to say, well, will they take this, will they take that? You know, whether it's weeds or mulch, or, you know, there's different varieties and different segments of categories of yard waste. So I think that would be good to have a description of that too.
The point that Mark has brought up in the past is there's kind of duplicitous coverage with regard to what is allowed to be dropped off there now and what John's will pick up in heavy pickup, which we pay for under contract. Mark has specifically brought up construction materials, concrete, rocks, stuff like that. And there is an allowance under our code currently, broken concrete material, rocks, and blacktop materials, not to exceed 1 cubic yard in aggregate may be transported by city residents and deposited at the designated area. So if that's something specifically that, you know, this board recommends that we no longer take, that's a recommendation that could come from you, certainly. I think that's the type of feedback that we're looking for. So.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other discussion on this issue?
Well, I'd like to provide the feedback right now that to remove that section on broken concrete, rocks, and blacktop material. Is there anybody on the board that disagrees with removing that?
Yeah, we could also bring back a list of what is duplicitous as far as what Johns will pick up versus what's allowed to be dropped off, so you can see how they match up and where there might be, where we might be paying for two different services that provide two different avenues to the same end.
One other thing currently in the ordinance I saw that we don't do or want people to do is it states containers used for transportation may be deposited in the designated container. I'm sure there was a designated container at one point in time, but
At one time.
But that's one of those things you don't really want in an ordinance.
They had Jersey barriers set up in like box shape, and you could deposit stuff there, looser stuff. The actual like logistics of the site and mechanics of the site have certainly changed over time.
Okay, what,
So it just seems like it'd be a good time to look at the ordinance and adjust things there then.
Should the city staff start working on a revised ordinance? Start redlining?
Yeah, we've gotten some feedback tonight that we can try and pull together some recommendations for the board on and report back and see what the board thinks of those, and then keep refining until we get to a point where the board wants to forward on that recommendation to the city council.
okay.
Sounds good.
Sounds good.
What am I focusing,
So the
what are we
city's-
focusing on for the revised ordinance?
Pardon?
We want to focus on the cost or burden of the rigid materials, or?
I think we want to streamline what's allowed and then streamline the language to more fit the new model of the yard waste site and where we see it to be. Like if there is an issue, like we want to, if we're going to open up the ordinance, I think we should kind of look at it from this overview of change and maybe how we want it to look.
Sure.
Do we know when the last time it was revised?
I can find out. I don't know whether or not it's been revised since it was adopted. It was adopted or amended, I'm not sure, in 1995 last. So,
So it's been a minute.
yep, it's been a minute.
And with a new waste site, I think it does make sense to take a look at that ordinance and make sure it aligns with the vision of that site.
I believe it was adopted in 1994, and then a portion of it was amended in 95, based on what I'm seeing here. The new site, that's really the trigger. Let's see what operations at that are. proposed to be and write an appropriate ordinance. We have a good framework here, so
Yeah, it's just, cleaning it up a bit.
good deal.
Okay. Anything else on this topic? I don't think we need a motion for anything.
No.
Okay, moving on to the director's report. Randy?
Dave, if you could pull up the first slide, please. So we've had a busy time since the Public Works Board met last. I'll start with the electric department. Slide. We've been responding to power outages. In this particular case, it was on the other side of the lake where we had our cutout that was tripped, and we found that there's some broken tree branches down. Next. And then, as is typical, we send the bucket up, and we have our cutouts right there. Hold that, please. And in this particular case, this cutout was an old one, and it had varmint in it that had nested. So we replaced that cutout with the new gate style. Next. Here, this is preliminary work for our connectivity project. That's the sidewalk project, TAP grant project that's going on right now. Prior to these projects, you send out notices of conflict with different utilities, such as utility poles that would be in the way. And in this case, around Fayetteville Park, this utility pole was going to be in the way of the new sidewalk. So the crew is out here, and they are relocating, well, they're taking down this old pole and putting up a new one. Next. You can see them doing that. This is typically a three-man job. Shane is in the rig operating the crane. Luke carries the pole into place, and Austin prepares the guy line to stabilize it. Next. This is one of the more unpleasant jobs we have to do with the electric utility. We are shutting off some power in town. The customers who are delinquent get a good deal of notice. But when the time comes, we do have, in this case, we had 5 different residences where we had to pull their meter. Next. And this is doing that as well. And this is TJ pulling that meter, actually. Next. And then the street department. There's been a good deal going on in the spring. Next. We were able to get back and do some restoration along Pinnacle Drive. This was, you see the new sidewalk panels, these we did in the fall, but we were not able to do the soil restoration until this spring. So this is what the crew is working on. Next. Just bringing in the topsoil, reseeding and rematting. Next. In some cases, we have to grind down existing tree roots. This tree had been removed at a previous time, but the roots are still there, and they cause heaving in the sidewalk. So we'll attempt to, when we can, pull those panels out and grind out the roots. Next. Another important element, especially in the spring, is we try and keep our drainage ditches clear so they can hold a higher volume of water. These pay off big dividends, like right now when we're having a lot of rain. We're able to move that water away from our roads. So this is a priority for the streets department in the spring. Next. And next. And then there was spring brush pickup. This is when all the crew is involved in the streets department. And we'll spend a week going through the town. In this case, and this year we went through the town twice. The city, I'm sorry. Next. And you'll see a few shots of this where the crew will go and we utilize the bucket truck, hold please, the bucket truck and the dump truck, sorry. Okay, next. And this is actually just this morning. We're finishing up some concrete work from last year's contract. This is at Commons Park, right along Main Street. There were 5 different areas where we were able to finish up some concrete work now that the warmer weather is here. Next. And next. On the wastewater department, a lot of maintenance, but the bigger issue next, the more exciting thing was we were able to host some tours of the local high school. The The gentleman there is Mr. Bill Kiesling. He's been with the wastewater department for 30 years. He has a great deal of knowledge, and he's completely in his element right here. He loves teaching. So we hosted 4 different classes that came in, and they start out in the laboratory. Next. And then Bill takes them out to the oxidation dish and explains how this goes. Next. And next. And here they're in our final clarifier. There's a reason that young lady's holding her nose, but it gives the kids a really good idea of how we are able to reintroduce contaminated water into our ecosystem. And next. This is the more compelling room. This is a Headworks building. This has the strongest odor, but so the kids don't linger there for too long. But next. And then they were back in the lab. This young fellow is looking at a slide. We take samples every day, and they're just looking at the different microorganisms that are in the water. Next. The big story the last month for the water department was flushing of our hydrants. Next. So this was the area we concentrated on for the spring. In April, we started on this side of Main Street, and then we went up there, and then we hit the south. And this took about 2 weeks' time to flush all the hydrants. Next. And you'll see just an example here. This is a delineator that is on that hydrant, just directs the water in a safe location. Next. And next. And then we also had an issue with, this is our library. They still had a lead line for their water service. So we ended up excavating. Next. And next. And we exposed this line. This is the water service right here. This part is going to our main, and this part is going into the library. And it's hard to notice from this shot, but that is lead that was been pounded onto that valve. So we ended up pulling all that out and replacing it with a poly material. Next. Oh, there's a closer shot, okay. And you can kind of see just back in the day, they didn't even have fittings. They would just meld that lead onto the valve.
So is the city side lead too?
This is, yes, this is a city side here.
So both sides were lead?
Yes. Mr. Waters?
How big is that? Just to get an idea.
That's an inch.
That's an inch?
Yes.
And that's enough
It
to
might be an
service
inch
the
and a
library?
quarter. I'm sorry?
An inch is enough to service the library then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, an inch can deliver a large volume of water. So
Okay, great.
next. And then we've had 2 projects that are up and running. The Brookstone project, Phase 8, which is a residential project, but it includes not just road, but our sewer and water there, and our TAP grant pedestrian connectivity project. Next. This is the Brookstone, where we are completing a proof roll. So once we removed all the topsoil and that, we started grading, mass grading, to contour the land and how the developer would like it. For the city, we focus on the constructability or the durability of the subgrade for the road. A road is only as good as its subgrade underneath it.
Right.
Next. So you notice here, this is a soil subgrade. We do what we call a proof roll with a triaxle dump truck loaded with stone. We run this over the subgrade and we walk and look for excessive deflection. And you do this long enough, you can figure out just how the soil is behaving underneath that load, dynamic load. And then you can make repairs to it. Once we're satisfied that the soil subgrade is solid enough, we bring in the stone base, the sub base for the stone. That's what this crew is doing here now. They are end dumping stone and they're spreading with the dozer and then they're gonna roll it. Next.
And when you say we are doing stuff, this is frequently a contractor doing this, correct?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's just a clarification.
Yes.
Yeah.
The Public Works Department, their role here is quality assurance. So, next. After that was done, a week later, when they rolled the stone subbase, they bring in the curb and gutter machine. And you can see it working here. The concrete truck will deliver the mix into a conveyor belt and it forms it into a curb and gutter. Next. Next. And this is the end product. They normally stay away from the inlets, and these are all hand poured here around the inlets. But this is Brookstone Phase 8. In the near future, we will be surfacing this road then with the binder that will allow access, vehicle access, especially emergency vehicle access. And once that's down, then the contractor can start building homes. Next. This is the TAP grant project. This started the second week in April. This is funded primarily from the DOT grant program. We are on Tyranina Road here. Next. And here you'll see this was all excavation. There was no, this is green space here. We're looking west, but they are heading east towards Fayetteville Park here. But it's very similar to road construction, just not as much stone, where they remove the vegetation, the topsoil, and then they replace it with stone and compact that, normally 6 inches of stone. Next. And then once they set their forms and everything's level and to the grade according to plan, they'll start placing the concrete. Next. I included this shot just in case you'd like to know. This is one of the ways we verify the quality of the concrete. That is an air entrainment meter. And I will normally stand there and watch as the technician will collect a sample. And, well, let me back up a little. All construction materials react to changes in weather and temperature, and concrete is no different. It will expand and contract, and that's why you sometimes see excessive cracking. One way to combat that excessive expansion and contraction is injecting air into the mix. This is with a liquid, and once it's agitated, little bubbles form, and this allows space or capillaries for the expansion internally of the concrete. So if it has a place to move in the concrete, it won't crack on the surface. And this machine, this little tool here, you fill that cylinder with air and you release it, and it tells you the equalized air pressure of the mix and there in that chamber. And that will tell us, or me, that they did indeed inject that concrete with air. So I just thought I'd include that. Next. Here is the same project, but now we're on Madison, and we're at the intersection with Marguerite. Yep. Next. Prior to any grading, we had to do some tree removal. Next. This is on Pope Street, where a tree was being removed. Next. And then they started to, after the prep work, they started to do all the concrete work on Marguerite. Next. The project here is about 50% completed in the field. We do have a sharp deadline coming up, and I'm just, how to put it, we're on track right now, I'll put it that way. So if we keep up our momentum and we don't get any big roadblocks, we should be able to make the deadline. Next. Special event we had, the Light and Water Building was able to host a rain barrel event where the public was invited. They had to pre-register, and they got to pick up rain barrels and construct them and decorate them if they liked. And we hosted this 2 weeks ago on Saturday in the Light and Water Building. Next. We had a good-sized crowd, and they next received a lecture from Brooke, who is with the Rock River Improvement Society Coalition. She just talked about runoff and the quality of water. Next. And then everyone came out into our shop and started assembling their rain barrels. Next. Next. And sometimes we'll have functions at Light and Water where we'll move the equipment out and we'll clean everything up. I'll put some tarps up along our shelves for some of our more sensitive material. But normally, well, not normally, we've never had an instance or a problem, and we like hosting these events. Next. That's it. That's your Public Works Department.
Thank you, Randy.
Sure.
Just a random question.
Any
Do you do brake tests on that concrete too?
Absolutely. We'll cast 4 cylinders, break a cylinder at 7 days, 14, and 2 of them at 28. In this particular case, they need to have a break strength of at least 4,000 PSI at 28 days.
One thing I noticed that occurred this week, actually it was earlier in the month, the hydrant flushing maps were posted on the city website, and I thought that was nice, because it told everybody where everything, what to expect when their water was discolored
Yeah.
in that time.
Yep.
Does anybody have any questions or any other issues? Or
The only addition I'd note is the Brookstone Phase 8 project. Perhaps due to the winter weather that we had, they had until October to reach substantial completion, and they're going to be able to have buildable lots here. It's looking like yet in June, so very ahead of schedule and quite an impressive job.
Thank you. All right.
Free time to do that update will be, I want to make sure that we're all well versed. The EPA has introduced new limits. The DNR hasn't adopted those yet. There's been
Recommendations.
Yeah, a recommendation has been made, but nothing formally has happened at this point in time. We are also a claimant in a couple of PFAS lawsuits that are currently going on, and we have some obligations that we have to meet with regard to testing. And actually, I'm not actually clear if we do. We have a threshold test that was taken prior to the initiation of the lawsuit that does qualify, but I believe we're going to have to engage in extra testing. So maybe when we have that information as well, we can provide an update.
Okay, thank you.
Good.
The DNR regulates that, right, in the state? EPA is they
EPA is-
set out, but the Wisconsin has to create their own
Typically trickles
guidance,
down.
right?
Yep, EPA is federal. Yes, you're exactly correct. Yep.
I'm
That
just
trickles
making
down
sure that it counts for all. I mean, I understand what I do, but I don't understand PFAS per se.
Something parts per trillion.
Yeah.
Five
It's,
or something like that.
This is a contemporary issue that we're only going to learn more about and understand our role and what effect we are under. Our threshold test does not show a detectable amount of PFAS in our groundwater, in our drinking water. Our waste system has not been tested to my knowledge.
Correct.
And I'm not 100% sure on that through time, but that is the information that I've gotten. And I am not aware of detectable amounts there, but I would expect that there is a detectable amount of PFAS in our waste system. Based on my understanding, that's a very, very common problem.
Yeah.
So, but we don't know at this point. It's not a reason for alarm. We're kind of catching up, and I think both the EPA and the DNR are catching up to what appropriate regulations need to be and a reaction to this issue, so.
Yeah.
Thank you. Does anybody else have anything? Okay, but entertain a motion to adjourn.
So made?
So moved. We are adjourned. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.